The moment I saw the pregnancy test, I knew my life was about to collapse. It wasn't the kind of shock that makes you yell or slam doors. It was the quiet kind, the kind that drains the air out of your lungs and leaves you standing there, frozen, realizing you've been used for years, and tonight they were asking for more. I'm Michael, 31 years old, warehouse supervisor in Reno, Nevada, and for the last 3 years, I've been raising 5 children that aren't mine. I stood in the middle of our cluttered living room, stepping over piles of unfolded laundry and toys that didn't belong to me, watching my sister Jenna casually lean against the couch. She rubbed her stomach slowly, smugly. "I'm pregnant," she said. Again. 6th time. Her boyfriend Kyle was sprawled across the couch, controller in hand, eyes never leaving the TV. No reaction, no concern, just the sound of gunfire from a video game. My stomach twisted, not because of the baby, but because I already knew who was expected to pay for it. I had just come off a 60-hour work week, double shifts back to back, steel-toe boots still on my feet. My body ached in places I didn't even have names for anymore. And now this. I looked around the room, the same room I cleaned every night, the same kitchen I stocked with groceries, the same house where I woke up at 4 a.m. every morning to make lunches for kids who weren't mine. "Congratulations," I said quietly. Jenna smiled wider. "I knew you'd understand." That's when something inside me snapped. "No," I said. "I'm done. I'm not paying for another child. Not food, not diapers, not daycare. I'm finished." The room exploded. She jumped to her feet, face red with rage. "After everything I've let you be part of, you're ungrateful." Kyle finally looked up from the TV. "Relax, man. Family helps family." Family. That word tasted bitter. "You don't work," I said, staring straight at him. "Either of you. I do, and I'm done carrying this house on my back." That's when Jenna crossed the line. "If you don't help, you can get out. This is my house." My house? The house I paid rent for, the utilities I kept on, the fridge I filled. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just nodded. And that scared her more than anything. That night, I barely slept. At 4 a.m., my alarm dragged me out of bed like it always did. The kids were already awake, crying, fighting, hungry. I moved on autopilot, packing lunches, tying shoes, checking homework, while Jenna and Kyle slept behind the locked bedroom door, shielding themselves from the noise of their own children. I dropped the kids at school and daycare, then drove straight to the warehouse. Physical work was easier than emotional weight. During my lunch break, my phone buzzed. Final notice, utility shutoff scheduled. My heart dropped. I'd given Jenna $600 the week before to cover the electric bill. I rushed home after my shift. There it was, a bright red shutoff notice taped to the front door. Inside the trash can, I found the receipt. Designer maternity clothes. Every dollar. Gone. I paid the bill using money I had saved for night classes, the only way out I'd been planning quietly for months. That evening, the high school called. My nephew skipped class. When I picked him up, he looked at me with tired eyes and whispered, "I don't think Mom sees us anymore." That was the moment I realized something terrifying. The pregnancy wasn't the problem. It was the cover, and I had no idea how deep the betrayal really went. Before I continue, let me ask you something. If you're watching this right now, comment your city and state below, because stories like this don't just happen to one family. They happen everywhere. And this was only the beginning.
The bank didn't care that I was family. They cared about numbers. I sat across from a man in a gray suit inside a glass office that smelled like burnt coffee and printer ink. He kept calling me sir, the kind of politeness meant to soften bad news. It didn't. "These accounts are legally yours," he said, sliding the papers back across the desk. "The signatures match your records." I stared down at the stack. Credit cards, personal loans, balances I had never seen before. They're not mine, I said. I didn't open these. He nodded slowly, the way people do when they've already made up their minds. Do you have proof? Proof. I thought about 30 years of being dependable, perfect credit, never missing a payment, trusting my own sister without hesitation. No, I said. He leaned back in his chair. Then the responsibility remains with you. Just like that. When I walked out of the bank, my legs felt heavy. I sat in my car with both hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead, waiting for the world to correct itself. It didn't. That night, I didn't sleep. I replayed Jenna's face when I said I wouldn't pay anymore, the way Kyle smirked, the way the house suddenly felt like a trap instead of a home. I called Jenna the next morning. No answer. I left a message, calm, controlled. Jenna, we need to talk. This is serious. She called back hours later, crying. Mike, you don't understand. Things got out of control. Kyle's debts, the kids, the bills. You used my name, I said. Silence. They wouldn't approve anything under mine, she whispered. Your credit was perfect. Was. You committed fraud, I said. The word hung between us like broken glass. I did it for the kids, she rushed, for their future. I almost laughed, because I'd built my entire life around their future. I need you to fix this, today. I can't, she said quietly. If this comes out, Kyle could get in trouble. His family would destroy us. There it was, the line she wouldn't cross. Not for me. I hung up. That afternoon, a letter arrived from the bank's legal department, intent to pursue recovery. They were coming for everything. That's when I realized something terrifying. If I stayed silent, I would lose my credit, my savings, my future. If I spoke up, I would lose my family. That night, I sat at the kitchen table long after everyone went to bed. The same table where I helped kids with homework, where I paid bills that weren't mine, where I convinced myself sacrifice was love. I opened my laptop and logged into my credit report. There it was, another alert, a new account, already maxed out. Baby furniture. Something inside me went cold. This wasn't desperation anymore. It was theft. I grabbed my keys and drove across town to a small coffee shop that stayed open late. My friend Evan was already there, waiting. He worked as a paralegal and had seen this kind of thing before. He didn't sugarcoat it. This is identity theft, he said, and if you don't act now, it'll get worse. He helped me freeze my credit, file disputes, document everything. Before he left, he looked me straight in the eye. If they did this once, they'll do it again. I drove home knowing the war had already started. Jenna was in the kitchen when I walked in, typing furiously on her phone. Her transaction had been declined. She looked up. Our eyes met, and for the first time, she knew I wasn't saving her anymore.
I thought leaving quietly would be the hardest part. I was wrong. The silence in the house turned sharp after that night. No shouting, no arguments, just eyes following me when I moved, doors closing a little harder than usual, whispers that stopped when I entered a room. They knew something had changed. I came home early one evening, not to cook or clean, but to check the mail. I'd been waiting for responses, banks, credit agencies, anyone who could confirm I still existed on paper. That's when I saw it, a notification on my phone. Hard inquiry detected. My stomach dropped. I opened the credit alert with shaking hands. A new credit card had been opened, in my name, already maxed out. Luxury baby furniture, designer stroller, things I couldn't afford and never wanted. That was the moment I understood this wasn't carelessness. It was deliberate. I locked myself in my room and called Evan. I did it again, I said. There was a pause on the line. Mike, he said slowly, you need to get out, tonight if possible. Out where? I asked. Anywhere, he replied.
Because if they're bold enough to keep using your identity, the next step won't be financial. I didn't argue. I started planning, not emotionally, strategically. I checked my bank balances, hid my documents, took photos of everything, emails, statements, alerts, evidence, not memories. Later that night, my nephew Josh knocked on my door. He was 16, too quiet for his age, the kind of kid who learned early that survival meant observation. He handed me his phone. "I recorded something," he whispered. The video showed my sister and our aunt sitting at the kitchen table, talking like they thought no one was listening. "She can't leave," my sister said. "If he does, we're done." "We'll report the car stolen," my aunt replied. "Say he took money, too. The police will scare him." My chest tightened. They weren't just stealing from me anymore. They were setting a trap. Josh swallowed hard. "They're planning to call the cops tomorrow." I looked at this kid who had been raised in chaos and forced into adulthood too early. "Thank you," I said. That night, I didn't pack boxes. I packed like someone escaping. No photos, no keepsakes, only essentials. Documents, laptop, clothes for a week. I used black trash bags so it looked like garbage. At midnight, I slipped out the back door. Josh helped me load the car in silence, streetlights flickering above us. Before I left, he said something I'll never forget. "If you stay, they'll destroy you. If you go, at least one of us gets out." I drove away without turning the headlights on until I reached the corner. I didn't cry. I felt light. 40 minutes later, I reached a small studio apartment Evan had helped me find. It smelled of dust and old paint. To me, it smelled of freedom. I collapsed on the mattress and slept for the first time in weeks. The peace lasted less than 48 hours. I was sitting on the floor going through paperwork when red and blue lights flashed through the blinds. A violent knock shook the door. "Police!" My heart slammed into my ribs. I opened the door slowly. 2 officers stood there, and behind them, my sister, crying, pointing, performing. "He stole from me. He took money and jewelry. I'm scared." I stepped aside and let the officers in. "Search," I said calmly. They found nothing. No jewelry, no cash, no stolen property. Then another voice echoed from the hallway. "Officer, wait!" Josh, out of breath, holding his phone. "She's lying. I recorded her hiding the jewelry to frame him." The officer watched the video. Everything changed. My sister stopped crying. The officers turned to her, filing a false police report, identity theft, fraud. She wasn't the victim anymore. She was the suspect. As they escorted her away, she screamed at me, "You did this!" No, she did. And for the first time, I realized something powerful. I wasn't running anymore. I was standing.
People think exposure brings instant justice. It doesn't. It brings pressure. The police didn't arrest my sister that night, but they didn't leave empty-handed either. Statements were taken, reports filed, and something far more dangerous than handcuffs followed her home: attention. Within a week, the house I'd escaped became a spotlight. The false police report triggered a deeper review. When the officers saw the credit fraud connected to my name, they forwarded everything to financial crimes. That alone was enough to bring another agency to the door: child services. I wasn't there to soften the edges anymore. No clean floors before inspections, no stocked fridge, no calm adult explaining things away. When the caseworker walked into that house, she saw what I'd been hiding for years: mold in the bathroom, empty cupboards, kids wearing clothes that didn't fit, electricity already shut off again. My sister argued, blamed stress, blamed me. It didn't matter. The report was filed. 2 days later, I got a call from Josh. "They took the kids," he said quietly. The words hit harder than any threat ever had. Temporary placement, foster care, Josh separated from the younger ones. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall. This wasn't what I wanted, but it was what neglect creates when it finally has no cover. The man who lived off my work, her boyfriend, was gone within a week, packed his bags the moment the word investigation entered the room, took what little cash was left, and vanished. No goodbye, no apology, just absence. My sister tried calling me after that, once. I didn't answer. A month later, I was summoned, not as a suspect, but as a witness. Fraud charges, false reporting, financial abuse. She took a plea deal. No prison, but fines, community service, permanent records. We didn't speak, not because I hated her, but because saving someone who keeps drowning you isn't love. It's self-destruction. While all of that was unfolding, something unexpected happened in my life. The internship I'd applied for months earlier, when I thought was gone forever, came through. Paid, real money, real future. I worked harder than I ever had, not to prove anything, but because for the first time the effort belonged to me. I moved into a small apartment closer to work, nothing fancy, quiet, clean, peaceful. My credit took time to recover, but my name stayed clean. That mattered more than square footage. Josh reached out once a week. We talked about school, music, his plans to leave when he turned 18. I started a protected account for him and the others, locked tight, no access but theirs, no rescues, just opportunity. 6 months later, I stood outside the warehouse where I'd once worked myself into exhaustion for other people's lives. I didn't feel angry. I felt finished. Because here's the truth no one tells you. The hardest part of walking away isn't loneliness. It's learning that some people only collapse when you stop holding them up. And that's not cruelty. That's reality. I wasn't punished for leaving. I was rewarded with clarity. And I finally understood this. Boundaries don't destroy families. They expose who was never family to begin with.
People expect the end to feel like victory, a smile, relief, some loud moment where everything finally makes sense. Mine didn't. It felt quiet. A year passed. No dramatic reunions, no apologies, no sudden healing. Just distance. Josh aged out of the system early and moved in with a friend near his college. We spoke often, but never about his mother. That silence wasn't forced. It was mutual. The younger kids stayed with relatives, safer ones, people who didn't need rescuing. My sister never reached out again. Not because she couldn't, because pride is heavier than regret. I kept working, early mornings, long shifts, honest pay, the kind of tired that lets you sleep at night. My life became smaller, but steadier. No chaos, no emergency calls, no lies disguised as family. One evening, after a long walk, I sat alone on a park bench and watched the sun disappear behind the buildings. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty for surviving. I thought about all the years I confused loyalty with sacrifice, love with endurance, responsibility with silence. I thought about how often people like me are told, be patient, be the bigger person, don't make trouble. What they really mean is, stay quiet so others don't have to change. Here's the truth I learned the hard way. Walking away doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you finally cared about yourself. I didn't destroy my family. I stopped being destroyed by it. And life didn't punish me for that. It gave me peace. If you're watching this and carrying a weight that was never meant to be yours, if someone you loved built their life on your silence, if you've been made to feel selfish for choosing air over drowning, remember this. You are not cruel for setting boundaries. You are not weak for leaving. And you are not wrong for surviving. Quiet people don't make scenes. They don't beg. They don't explain themselves forever. They move forward, and they don't look back. If this story meant something to you, like the video. It truly helps the channel grow. Subscribe for more real, true-style stories about resilience, justice, and quiet strength. Comment below. Which part of this story hit closest to home? You're not alone, and the quiet ones always have the last word.